Good day, fellow champions of inclusion. I am Aaron, and this is the Inclusive Dad podcast, where we explore inclusion and make it practical. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to join me in exploring ways we can create a more inclusive world together. You are important, you matter, and you can make a difference. Today, my guest is Kristen Donnelly. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm delighted to be here.
Yeah, thank you. Why don't you just start us off by just telling us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. My name is Kristen. I grew up in the Philadelphia area and live there now, which is a huge part of my identity, I will admit. And I have lived in a couple different places and cultures, which also informs who I am as I move through the world. I lived in Texas for a while. I lived in Belfast, Northern Ireland for a while, Kentucky, Colorado, places like that. And one of the things that I've kind of held as a thread throughout my life is the idea that people are people. And that sounds so trite, but it seems to be the first thing we forget when we're in leadership, especially, or in conflict with somebody. The first thing that we do is dehumanize the other person so that we can win. I'm part of a family business and have been since I was 7, which is another big part. And we are an intentional non-traditional employer, which in our kind of parlance, we're a manufacturing company primarily. Our parlance is that we do our best to employ and hire folks that other companies would find, outside of the box for some reason, usually because of addiction recovery issues or incarceration or something like that. And our policy has always been for our labor force that if you show up sober every day and on time, we'll train everything else you need. We really like being people's first foot back in the door or in the door for the first time, whatever their story is. Because lots of people make choices, we all do, but we all also have choices made for us. And the intersection of those two things has been a really important part of my family company. We're a network of about 8 different divisions and companies and associations and everything else that my brother and I took over about 5 years ago from our dad. So it'll be part of my life till I die. I hope it keeps going. Yeah. And our family mission statement is to impact lives and generate wealth. And we believe in that to be holistic wealth. So that's kind of my context. In the meantime, I have been incredibly lucky to study with some really, really smart and wonderful people. So I've got 2 master's degrees and doctorate. And the whole kind of thing I have been looking at and studying and researching that I did for 22 odd years, the curiosity that I've chased ever since is how does like someone's belief systems about the world, how does that actually affect how they live their day-to-day life? Because so many of us will, say we believe something and then it doesn't actually do anything in how we treat people. And so that's what I've been looking at for a really long time. And I think I'm married to a guy I met in Northern Ireland. I always joke that he's my personal leprechaun, which he hates. So I do it as often as possible because that's marriage. And we get to live right near my family. And we try to see his back in Northern Ireland as often as possible. So
that's great. I grew up. My family actually had a manufacturing business also. I worked there. So I remember, my grandpa and dad started in the 70s. So when I was a teenager, that was the first jobs I had, mowing the yard and then welding and doing all that stuff. So
I always joke.
Go ahead.
No, please go ahead.
It's an interesting dynamic though, working with family. So, for me, it worked out well when I needed to. I could work there and gave me a lot of skills I wouldn't have otherwise. But for some people, working with family does not work out. So
not so much. I joke all the time that child labor laws don't apply to family businesses. So my brother and I have vivid memories of sitting in front of home improvement episodes, scrubbing bottles that needed to get cleaned. When we were first kind of open, and now my brother's the CEO and I'm the COO, whatever those mean. Titles mean nothing. And so it's nice to work together every day. We work well and we love working together, but absolutely. We talk to people frequently because we like the family business, like mantra, like, whatever. And so we talk to people frequently and they tell like horror stories and we're just like, we are so lucky, but we've been working on our communication almost since he was born. So we didn't learn to communicate after we took over, which I think was a real key. We learned how to have productive conflict instead of
Yeah.
just conflict.
Yeah.
And all of that, which really, really helped. And I think some other folks don't have that privilege of learning how to do all of that together before they're thrown into a position of having to figure out how to do that and also grow a company and also lead people and also sleep. And that's all very hard to manage at once.
For sure. Yeah, I'm curious the piece you said about your company where you try to like hire people and give them chances when others don't. Like, how did that start, or
With
do you
my
know how that
dad.
started? Okay.
So we're in a section of Philadelphia called Kensington, which
Okay.
for anyone familiar with Kensington or with Philadelphia, we are only a couple blocks from Kensington and Allegheny intersection, which is
Okay.
very, very famous as one of the statistically poorest areas, completely resource deprived. And we did for a couple of days, and we almost just permanently lost funding for our public transit here in Philadelphia, and that would have cut off a lot of folks from jobs and even just getting to food banks and things like that. It was for a very long time the epicenter of the heroin and opioid epidemics, and now fentanyl, like now synthetic opioids throughout the East Coast. Even it's a place where you just like you drive around and you're just reminded of how much pain humans are in. So my dad and his business partner in the early 90s were intentionally looking for a factory that was failing in Baltimore, Boston, or Philadelphia, somewhere that was deeply hit by globalization and where we made a lot of things in America in the past, but weren't anymore. And they kind of scouted all over the place, and they found this. We're called Abbey Color Incorporated. We manufacture dyes and colorants for the pharmaceutical and kind of larger industrial industries. So the brown color for the outside of Advil, the color for antifreeze and for car wash soap, and like things that no one ever thinks about, like, oh, a dye should, like, how do you get that? And we also make cancer screening stains, which is the thing we're incredibly, incredibly proud of, as well as the stain that helps diagnose glaucoma. And we're the only manufacturers of nearly everything we make, just because it's all very niche and all kind of where we're at. But Dad bought it. It was failing. It had been around since, our building has been dyeing things since 1902, I believe. And it used to dye cotton. There's still the cotton hooks on the 4th floor where you would drag the cotton to the 4th floor and drag it down and through various stages of dyeing. And so he wanted it to be a place, and this is a lot driven by our faith system. He wanted there to be a place in the neighborhood that you didn't need any education or skill sets to enter the workforce again, because he felt it was, and he still does. He's still with us. He's not passed. He feels very strongly and has passed, and my mother does, and he's passed that on to us, that there's only so much we can ask people to do if we don't provide them the systems to make the choices we want them to make. And so he wanted to create no entry manufacturing jobs. At the time in Philly, pretty much all the manufacturing was union and highly skilled for the time, for the early 90s. So he rewrote manufacturing processes down to pictograms because a lot of folks were fairly illiterate, and kind of rewrote everything to make it a lot easier. And we've never, we founded in 91. So like 34 and a half years, never had a layoff, never had a recall. We've been able to keep our turnover rates overall pretty low. We're really small because we want to make sure that we have the opportunity to serve everybody as much as possible. And it's been a labor of love for sure, but not anything that I think any of us would trade.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's going to be a really weird question, but do you know Shane Claiborne?
I do. Yeah.
You do?
We're not far from Shane at all. Yeah.
Okay. That's crazy because I just started listening to a lot of his stuff earlier this year, and you like Kensington. I was like, hold on a second. So I'm looking up. I'm like, that's where he's at. That's weird. That's interesting.
Yeah, we're not far from Simple Way at all. And there's been a couple tangential, tangential connections.
Yeah.
But like, no, I drive by their main office on
That's
a
cool.
regular basis. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I really enjoy his stuff. You mentioned about like with how people this is their belief system and not living it out. I like listening to him because he seems to what he says he believes, he lives it out. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and he always has, and I really appreciate that. And there's definitely things that we don't see eye to eye on, and there's
Right.
definitely pathways, especially like he and my dad have gotten into it a few times, but
Sure.
both in respect and love, and just different
Yeah.
versions of our faith system. We share a very
Yeah.
similar one,
Yeah.
but different kind of execution of it. And so
That's
I've
cool.
always appreciated that, because if you can't stand up to people for what you believe in, then I don't think you believe it.
Sure.
And so that's just my personal opinion.
Yeah.
So no, I've loved working with Simple Way for years now. Yeah, I could. So I don't know, probably a 20-minute walk from where I'm sitting right now.
Oh,
So
that's cool. Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I was like, should I ask this question? This is gonna be weird. It turned out okay, so that's good. That's crazy though, like how the life is. You just didn't know you knew him, and I've been reading his stuff. Then we talk, and like, whoa, that's crazy.
yeah, he's a great guy. His brain is fascinating
Yeah.
to um, think about. And I really appreciate, like I said, we disagree on a lot of how to work through the problems in Kensington and in Philadelphia, but I don't think he's wrong. I
Yeah.
just think, and I don't believe he thinks, or Simple Way thinks we're wrong either.
Yeah.
There's lots of solutions that are needed in a place that has been routinely and systemically ignored by the
Right.
resources of the city.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, the ways I listen to city officials speak about this neighborhood makes me, colloquially like want to do a murder. Like it makes me
Yeah.
so angry.
Yeah.
There's a lot of problems here, and we need a lot of really big thinkers to solve them. And
Yeah.
and at the municipal level, those are rare. And so seeing them on the nonprofit and kind of local level is a lot more hope giving.
Yeah. You bring up something kind of interesting. So I have a daughter, Cecilia. She's 22. Uses a wheelchair, has cerebral palsy and epilepsy. And for a long time after I found out about inclusion, getting her back in the general education classes, I was like, if I just tell them we want inclusion, they're just going to do it. And you're like, hold on a second, that's not how it's worked in our situation. So part of me is like, come to the realization, like I just need to. What can I do today to make the world more inclusive myself and spread that message, and then we can work at it that way rather than, like top down. Let's get the government to do what we want and then work that way. What are your thoughts on, what is the best strategy to, make changes in your neighborhood or the world? Is it more of a top down or bottom up, or we need both, or what are your thoughts?
Yeah, my answer is yes. Um, I mean, the core of it is curiosity. So if at any given point in time, it's like when I do workshops on inclusivity, one of the things I do is put up a picture that's me and my husband. And when you look at the two of us, we look exactly the same, air quotes, where we both have glasses, we're both white with brown hair, we dress very
Hmm.
similarly, like all of those kind of things. And so I'll ask the audience, like, describe the two of us, like describe, and they will have met me for about 20 minutes at that point, and they'll say everything about him that they say about me, and they don't even realize they're doing it. And then I'll say, okay, let me play you a video clip. And John's got a thick Northern Irish accent. He dreamed of being an astronaut growing up. I dreamed of being an actress and an author.
Hmm.
He grew up honestly in the middle of a civil conflict, of a civil war that I
Right.
didn't
Yeah.
grow up in.
Yeah.
Um, and like all of these tiny little things. He's one of five. I'm one of two. He's
Mhm.
Irish Catholic. I'm, Scandinavian Protestant in a lot of ways. So I kind of break out all of these things that make us
Yeah.
different. And I say, if we who look exactly identical and present as exactly the same ability levels and potentially even education levels, if we're so different, what do you think everybody else is? And so then it just becomes this question of everybody you meet, not like analytically or judgy, but like how is there difference between us, and how can I either accommodate that difference or at
Mhm.
least be aware of that difference? and a rewriting of the idea that difference is a bad thing, that difference means less than or greater than. Difference is simply a value neutral reality. It is simply difference. What we do with that difference is when it becomes more labeled in value systems and morality, which America has a very specific idea of what a good person is. And we only believe you can be a good person if you work really hard. So it's very difficult for us to believe as a culture and even as an individual that if you're not a really hard worker, and we all define that differently internally, then you can't be a good person. And then therefore, if you are profoundly physically or mentally disabled, we then therefore pity you that you can't be a hard worker. And that's this whole system that we're all born and kind of baptized into without even wanting to. And so if we get curious and we center the humanity in people, and we believe that everybody is worth respect and dignity, and we start there, that helps. Because I've been in rooms, in government rooms, both in here and in other countries, where they start with that question of what do these humans need to thrive? And then those programs and systems get set up and they do thrive and they work really well because the people closest to the problems are the closest to the solutions, whatever that looks like. And when they start with, oh, well, we have all this, we believe that this is a good cause, and so let's give money. Like, no. That system is either going to be so dehumanizing accidentally out of pity, or it's just simply going to fall apart. You have to center things around people and not processes. And it has to be both. It has to go both ways. And I'm a social worker as well. If any social workers listening will hear me like spouting NASW, credentials and ideas. But for me too, it just comes by how I've been trained to see the world through my parents and kind of everything else. Is that I don't have how I am a human is not the only way to human. And so the more we can, those of us who know that, those of us who lived it, like you profoundly understand what it's like to be a dad in the situation that you are in. You profoundly understand how your daughter sees the world and moves through it and experiences it from a dad's perspective. And the more we can be honest about those things, I'm neurodivergent and I have chronic pain. And the more I talk about that, the more people will be like, I had this perception of these people, but here's the reality of these people. Maybe, and even if they'd never ask us a question, we change their world just a little bit. Just a little, because big change is never real.
No.
It's never real. It's always, big change is great. And we need big emotions and big visions. And this is even elections aren't practical. They are so about what we believe as a people. The practicalities start a lot later. The changes that stick in so many life circumstances are tiny. And the ones that change us as people, our viewpoints, not maybe our behaviors, because again, systems work against us, but our viewpoints and behaviors and how we move through the world, those things are tiny.
And I had to realize, and I mean, you hear it, but change takes time. I mean, like my daughter, 10 years ago, she was in a concert with her choir and the stage wasn't accessible. So I had to carry her up onto the stage. And now 11 years later, that theater is being renovated finally. And it's going to be able to get out there in a wheelchair. And it's like, you just want it to happen then so she can participate. But I know our experience in me doing that and people talking about it is part of what got it, completed now. So I have to hold on to that part. It's just as a dad, you want it now. Like it needs to be fixed now. We shouldn't wait, but be realistic. And it takes time.
Yeah. And I think, I'm not a parent and it's not something I plan on ever being, but I don't believe that I was like a treat to raise most of the time. Like I'm sure I was. And I do a lot of research now on teenage development. And early adulthood development. And one of the things that we're learning is that within reason, the more friction we can introduce into kids' lives, the better. And that they understand what it's like to overcome things in safe environments. Like I'm not, I'm not talking about have them doing like Naked and Afraid or something, but like the more we can do that. And kids understand patience more than we think they do. And it's actually usually parents and youth workers and teachers and everything that get a little bit more anxious. And we model anxiety for them in that way in so many ways. But I'm delighted that you guys have left that legacy, but I can't imagine how incredibly frustrating and dehumanizing that must have been for so many years.
Yeah, and I mean, part of it is too, like, I don't see myself, like, I mean, multiple people have said to me, like, I can't believe you take her out in the community or you do that kind of stuff. I'm like, I'm her dad. That's what I do. So, I mean, I think have this knack I do things that other people, see as huge things or view them in a different way than I do. But it's just, yeah, it's interesting. For sure. But yeah, it's like I said, it's stuff should be done, but it's not, and you can either be upset about it and let it ruin your life, or just, do what you can and plant the seed, and eventually, hopefully, it'll change. But yeah, that's
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, it's hard.
Yeah, you have a book about burnout. I
I
mean, you
do.
talked about a little bit about the like the systems that we have in America, where if you're not like a hard worker, you're not, you're maybe dehumanized. Does that tie into like the burnout stuff that in the
Oh, for
culture?
sure. For
Okay.
sure. So really when I look at the American dream, it's
Yep.
not really possible without burnout, either yourself or someone else's. And it is it is so fundamentally baked in that you cannot be a good person without being a hard worker. One, you cannot be a hard worker without doing it all alone. Two, and you cannot and you like neither one of those things are like good enough to earn you rest until you die. And those are all hangovers. The very first group of white colonizers that showed up and stayed were the Puritans back in the 16 whatevers.
Mhm.
And they're not the Pilgrims. The Pilgrims did the Thanksgiving myth
Yep.
thing.
Yep.
No, Puritans, totally different. Pilgrims came with beer, Puritans came with Bibles. It's a very different situation. Both have hats and buckles on their shoes. Very easy to confuse. And both were kicked out of England for their religious beliefs. The Puritans got really bitter about it and decided to build what they called a city on a hill. And they founded Massachusetts and Rhode Island in a lot of ways like that. And what their theology system was very complicated, um, and some people believe pieces of it today, some of it's died out. But the thing that matters the most to us, because there was no separation of church and state, there was no enlightenment, like everything that they went to church to believe is how they lived their lives, just pure and
Mhm.
simple. And so what matters for us today is that those three elements of their theology system, that you're only a good person if you work really hard. You are only a good person and hard worker if you do it all alone. And that rest is for when you are dead. They had a Sabbath, but it still wasn't restful.
Yep.
There was
Yep.
no like human priority at all. There was only, you know, communal priority, but not even in the way that we think about it. Like we think about it as like, well, okay, let's enrich other humans so we all can come together.
Sure.
This was like from a couple things I've read from their writings, like the only things that were acceptable community activities were like barn raising and quilt making. Like you didn't even like women didn't even have kids like as part of a like the church women didn't show up and make sure they could give birth safely all that often. So it's incredibly like self-sufficient. And when I read that idea of self-sufficiency and I trace it all the way up to now, and my partner, my business partner and kind of thought partner, Dr. Aaron Hinson, you know, we traced all this kind of stuff and we realized that the phrase self-sufficient is like the most damning phrase that is in so many ways has ever happened, and is very, very, very baked into being an American.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
so because of that, your body is not built for the American dream. Your body is built to take care of yourself, and not in a selfish way, but in a self-focused way that allows you to then be a human. But we have been told that burnout is a sign. It's like busyness is a sign of being important. And there's not
Yep.
a lot of people on the planet who don't want to be important in some way, shape, or form. Like we all crave importance, even if it's just from one person in our lives. And so, in order to be important, you need to work 20-hour days. And you need to have all these status symbols that you achieve with that. And you need to do all of these things. And because of that, burnout is almost inevitable.
Mhm.
And we've done a lot of research on this. I've been looking at it for over a decade because I started looking at burnout when I was still in college, actually, in like 0405, because I was doing youth work in religious settings. And at that point, it was a joke. People laughed about it, that the average tenure of a youth pastor in a church was 18 months because it was too exhausting. And like one of my projects in one of my classes was, how do we change that? And like, it was the shortest paper I've ever written. I think it was like 4 paragraphs. And it was like, get more volunteers, get less kids, ask for more money, pay for vacation time. And like from there, I've been looking at it ever since. You know, we know men and women are both burnout, but they burn out for different reasons at different rates. We know that, you know, women entered the workforce at an incredible rate during World War II. Amazing. It's taken however many years. I mean, women couldn't legally open their own credit cards until like my lifetime. Like we've had a lot of really frustrating things that also makes women burn out. But there hasn't been, now that more women are in the workforce than ever, not as many men have transitioned into being helpful in the home. Mm-hmm. And so women are working both paid and unpaid labor, 2 full-time jobs. And men tend to be working 1 to 1 1/4, just statistically across the board. Mm-hmm. And so all of those things that are just seen as American life are things that force your nervous system to just go into overdrive. And eventually you're going to crash. And a lot of definitions of burnout center it around work. And I kind of just did. So I want to step back and say that that's not the only place anyone burns out. Burnout can happen anywhere where your time and expertise is requested and required without being compensated with rest. So that's a volunteer job. It's caregiver burnout is huge among people, both for children and for elderly, you know, parents. But yeah, like leadership burnout's a big deal, like overcommitment's a big deal, you know, all those kind of things. But yeah, burnout is very American. And then we've exported all of these things. Burnout happens everywhere. We're one of the top three burnout countries in the world. I think Japan and South Korea are ahead of us, and that's it. Mm-hmm. But they all have different flavors and for different reasons. We're not honor shame cultures the way that an ancestral connection culture is the way that Korea and Japan are. We are instead connection to our own self-worth in a way that absolutely screws us. And until we intentionally begin to break it down, we will remain screwed.
Yeah. It's interesting you say that about Japan and South Korea, because we watch The Amazing Race, and like to watch the competitors on there from like Japan or, you know, South Korea probably, or that area, it's like they have so much pressure on themselves about like how they're gonna honor their parents or do stuff for their parents. It's like, I'm like, holy cow, you're not even having fun. You're so like focused on making sure you don't make your parent family look bad. I was like, wow, that's interesting.
Yeah, I've had the privilege of knowing and then also doing research with a lot of folks from both, you know, Southeast Asian, Indian, you know, Asian families, and they all say the same things. That's kind of, sociologists classify different kinds of cultures all around the world. Sure. And that whole band is considered honor shame. And the idea that your life is designed to bring honor to the people that brought before you, that came before you. And that is not a white Anglo-Saxon Protestant European culture. So part of America that's so fascinating is we bring all of these insane, in like really disparate mindsets together. And then say, oh, by the way, you have to be a really hard worker to be an American too. And it's how you get immigrant families that tell stories of like, oh, I haven't had a day off in 40 years. Pals, like, this isn't good. Your body does not like this. Yeah. But it's what we've been asked and trained. And like, I love my parents. I am so blessed to have a great relationship with them. And lots of, you know, I mean, like, it's not perfect. And, you know, there's things that I think we would all change about each other. But in general, like, I can call my parents whenever and talk and they're happy. So like, I'm good. And my dad's like 4 doors away still. He runs our accounts. So, sure. You know, whenever I need to. But I can't imagine having like any of them look at me and say, here is the measure of I want you as a daughter. Like, here is what you have to accomplish in order for me to be proud of you. But my gracious, I mean, they have other baggage. I have so much other baggage. But I have like friends who have actively been looked at and said that. and it's real rough for them. Some of them thrive in it for sure. And they're like, okay, let's go. And some of them are like, I can't do anything to make them happy. How do I have a relationship with them?
Mm-hmm.
And that's so baked into all of our foundations. And then the American soup of that bubbles into burnout just makes it even harder.
Sure. What is your definition of inclusion?
That's a great question. So I think of inclusion and intersectionality as very, very connected, not necessarily interchangeable, but very connected. So first of all, the first step of inclusion is making sure that there is room for everybody in the conversation if they want to be there. There's no like tokenism recruitment. There's no, we have to check all these boxes and make sure, but if people want to be there, whatever they bring, you make room for them in that conversation. Mm-hmm. The other thing is the intersectional part of it, which is they get to come however they want. So for instance, I carry a lot of intersections. Like I said, I'm neurodivergent. Mm-hmm. I'm married to an immigrant. I'm a business owner. I'm an academic, like all these kind of things. So I show up to a meeting at Philadelphia City Hall and it's about the neighborhood. I don't want to come to that meeting talking about neurodivergence. I want to come to that meeting talking as a social worker. But if they're like, well, like, could you talk to us about the neurodivergence? I'm like, no, that's my personal experience. I'm not an activist. I don't know how to build these spaces. But we do a lot, put people on the spot and ask them to share their personal stories in ways that they might not be prepared to in that room, in that circumstance, in that conversation. Mm-hmm. So it has to be a space where they show up on their terms. And we just expand our space and our mind for that. That does not mean, especially in terms of decision making, let me be clear, that everybody has an equal weighted voice. Everybody has an equal weighted contribution, not an equal weighted like decision. So, but we as decision makers have the responsibility to hear every story, every voice. I misspoke there a couple seconds ago. Every story, every voice, everything to make a more informed decision. Mm-hmm. So that's to me inclusion.
Yeah, that's great. What is one tip that you can share to help the listeners be more inclusive today? So just something everybody can start doing today to be more inclusive.
Be super curious. And if you don't know where to start about other people, and if you're a little bit wary as to where to start, think about your favorite television character and think about what kind of question you would ask them if you could. Think about your favorite book character and what you love about that. Or if you're in a family situation, since this is a parenting context, what is one thing you wish everybody else knew about your kid? And then imagine what that would be for the kids that are friends with your kid. So start small and just think, what are the things I cannot see that I wish I knew? And go from there.
That's a great tip. That's a great tip. Thank you.
Thanks.
Where's the best place for everybody to connect with you?
That's an absolutely excellent question. So first of all, if you would like the culture of burnout, let me grab it. I can show you the cover.
There you go.
Ta-da. If you would like the book, it is available on Amazon.com.
Sure.
In Kindle and paperback and audiobook, which I read the audiobook with Aaron. So if you think my dulcet tones would be great in your ear holes. Other than that, my website is Dr. Kristen Speaks. My name is Kristen. And there's no spaces between those words, and be happy to see you there.
Ready for the last question?
Always.
Do you like Spam lunch meat? Yes or no?
Yes.
Wow, that's quick. That was fast.
It's Danish ham. I grew up with it. It's just saltier Danish ham. So.
Yeah, I live near Austin, Minnesota, where they make Spam and where the Spam Museum is located. So I've been asking all my guests just to see what they say, and usually it's a fast yes or no. There's not usually a lot of
My experience is that most people that don't like it have never tried it. They just hate the idea of meat in a can. So to which I say, it's like, you don't want to know what other processed meat you eat. So if this tastes good, like, just enjoy.
That is interesting because there's a lot of other meats that are similar where it goes through the similar processes that we don't question too much. So
no, we have a thing in this part of the world called scrapple, and people
I
love
just
it.
heard this. I just heard about that. What is it?
It's like canned like hash like corned beef hash
Oh,
in a
okay.
way, but I'm not really good at describing it. To me, that's what it tastes like, but I'm not great at describing it. It is not it's a texture thing that I
Oh,
don't care for, but it's a very like upper like northern Pennsylvania, central Pennsylvania cultural thing to eat scrapple for like your big breakfast. But like we, over in the UK, like I ate blood pudding most weekends, and you don't, that's literally like that's organs and wheat. Like that's like you don't want to know. So
yeah.
I don't get on my high horse about those kind of things. I don't have the energy.
Yeah, my dad still eats like brown sugar once in a while, and I'm like, I can't even look at that or smell that usually when it's around. So
Yeah, it's not for me. Like there's lots, yeah, there's something here again in this part of the world called Taylor ham or pork roll, depending on where you're from. There's a
sure.
great like Coke and Pepsi level debate as to what we
Yeah,
call this thing. I hate it all. Like I hate it all. But like my brother has very strong opinions about it. So I have very strong opinions about cheesesteaks. So like I can't throw dispersions. But yeah, it's just food, man. Like stop
yeah,
policing other people's choices.
for sure.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me. It was so much fun.
Yeah. For those listening, thank you for allowing me to be part of your journey. It is truly an honor. Please join the podcast newsletter by clicking on the link in the episode description to keep up with the latest episodes. Together, we can make the world more inclusive. Until next time, stay empowered and be a champion for inclusion.